Okay, perfect. Guys, welcome in. My name's Steven. For some of you guys that aren't familiar, I am one of the partners, me and my wife, in Tohona Mercado, as well as Tohona Bar. And we just love doing these virtual tastings because it's a way for us to hop on together with a bunch of people and friends most of the time, and a few newcomers here today. And just geek out about Mezcal, talk about flavors, see what people think about what their favorites, because everybody has different palettes. And I think that's what's always really fun, especially about the world of Mezcal, is that even batch to batch, as you guys are very familiar, flavors can change so drastically. So this is series 2 of the Mixteca collection that we'll be tasting here today. If you guys had the pleasure of trying the first round, different batches, and then we'll also be tasting a private batch of Pichumel from Cinco Sentidos as well. We'll work through everything here tonight, but I want to give a formal welcome to Leslie here, who will be our guest and also co-host representing Cinco Sentidos here tonight. Give you the floor here to give yourself a brief intro.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to join in. It's been a while since I've done a Zoom tasting, so this is a lot of fun and kind of weird. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, so I had a friend of mine and myself do these Zoom tastings all through COVID. So now, trying to get back into the mindset of being alone in my kitchen and, all you guys all the way across the country and at 10 p.m. So thank you for keeping me off the streets of Austin today, because I did not need to go out tonight. So my name is Leslie Cobos. I'm the brand educator for Cinco Sentidos. I've been working with the brand since 2019. Cinco Sentidos is a house mezcal of a restaurant in Oaxaca City called a Destilado. And I actually bartended down there for 6 months, got to visit almost all of the families that we work with across Oaxaca, Puebla. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk about this Mixteca collection, especially because I haven't tried your batch pick, which is the same batch pick-ish that we had here in Texas, just a different, same varietal that we had here in Texas, but just a different batch. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear your comparison of the two and how they differ or how similar they are too. Cool. Well, everybody, welcome in. Let's pour the first one here. Leslie, I was thinking we should start with Pichumel. What are you thinking?
Yeah, that sounds good. Pichumel. Cool. Start off with a bang.
Yeah, exactly. I always like to let people know on the tastings. You guys, many of you have been here, but we have a few new comers. I always like to say, make sure to leave a little bit of the first one in each pour if you can, but especially the first one, not only because it's the private pick, but also we have a fresh palate, and we're going into this with lots of flavors. Maybe we just came back from dinner and had some exotic flavors. So always that first sip is kind of just there to acclimate our palate, get us centered, get us into this experience. And I highly encourage every single one of you guys, if there's any feedback, any questions, we'll definitely open up the floor after we talk about each expression to see what you guys think about it. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to interject and ask. This is meant to be interactive, and we love hearing what you guys think about these. And if it's not your favorite, that's okay. We have a thick skin. Me and Leslie have been in the industry for a little bit, so we can handle it. Our feelings won't be hurt or anything like that. So cool. Let's jump into the first one here. I hit up Jason, I think around like January, February is when I normally hit Jason up, and I'm like, yo, private batch, what do you have? What can we do this year? And so last year we had the Cinco Sentidos Mexicano from Tio Teo. That you guys, if you guys got it, it was like bursting with bananas, really beautiful. And I wanted to keep on that theme again this year with this release, something also very approachable. That release, as you guys remember, was around 43-44%. This one's a little bit higher. First one is Pichumel, the exclusive batch. We wanted to keep this one. I'm calling it, and I'm continuing with it. This is my gateway mezcal. This is for people that are coming into the store that are looking for something special, and I think it does a great job. At least I truly believe it does a great job of pulling both sides of the spectrum, and people like you guys that really geek out about mezcal, like me and Leslie, and then also for the other side of the demographic that we're trying to pull into understanding what complex agave spirits are like. This one here is this producer is one of my favorites. I'll let Leslie get into it more, but for me, there was this really cool lactic flavor on it, and we can get into more of the subtleties that I really found fun on this. It was really bright, so I hope you guys enjoy. Salud. Happy to have every single one of you guys in here, and we'll let Leslie get into a little bit more of the finer details. Cheers.
Cool. So I didn't do like a little presentation so you guys can see some pictures of the producers and the agaves and stuff. But I just wanted to start off by again just saying thank you, Stephen, for having me here and doing this presentation. Like I said, I'm super excited for this Pichumel batch, but just in general, happy to be here. And any questions or anything, I just want to reiterate that I'm totally open to having a conversation. I think that's one of the most important parts about sipping mezcal with some, strangers and friends alike. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat or speak up, no problem. We'll get to those. So like I said, Cinco Sentidos started off as a house mezcal for this restaurant, El Destilado in Oaxaca City. What's different between this collection that we first released back in 2019, and this is the second iteration of it in 2021, I believe, or 2020, yep. Is that the Colección Mixteca focuses on one particular region that spans across Oaxaca, Puebla, and Guerrero. And so this region, La Mixteca, has the same sort of historical linguistic background, as well as a cultural background traditions that are very unique to this particular region. So let me see if I can share my screen here.
I made you host, so you should be able to.
Perfect. Oh man, it's like riding a bike again.
We did so many.
Okay.
So
Yeah, you guys are the pros. Here in Texas, we shut down for about 2 months, and that's about it. So I've been doing these in person for at least a year and a half now. Okay, so it's so terrible, Jesus. So this is a collection for the second edition. So it was 8 total. You could see here, we're going to talk about the Pechuga de Azul, de Horno, and then the Espadillon, and then the Pichumel. This is just a different bottling than what's available out there in California, as well as a different batch. But the whole kind of point of this collection was to highlight sort of atypical production methods from producers that don't really necessarily make a ton of mezcal, or at least aren't super out there in terms of the mezcal that they make. You can't really find some of these agaves anywhere else, or just a particular still they managed to kind of hammer together into some sort of Frankenstein looking thing, so it's a really fun collection. And for those of you, I'm not sure how many people here haven't tried mezcal from Puebla. That's one of my personal favorite states to enjoy mezcal from, just because of, like Stephen was saying, some of these lactic flavors that come out, or some of these really, really bright, punchy, fruity flavors are super exciting for me. But I will say that the Espadillon and the Horno are actually from Oaxaca. So you'll get a nice little comparison there in terms of, one, different styles, of course, but even just the agaves, right? Okay, see, this is where it's going to get difficult. How do I go next? Oh. We may need to just do this. Oh, and I lost y'all.
It's okay.
1 second.
Oh,
sorry.
While you're figuring that out, maybe we can open up the floor. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I may just need to do it like this,
I think probably too. That's
okay. That way I have a little bit more control. Did you want to open it up for any, is there any questions or
Yeah.
anything just from the
Any
beginning?
questions so far, guys? Cool. Let's continue on.
Awesome. So here's just a little map that I put together so you can see where
Oh,
these
thank
different
you.
producers are. So what I should have done is actually mapped out the Mixteca region, but let's just imagine that the bottom ends like right here. It's actually pretty close to Oaxaca City. Ends here. You can see my mouse, right? Like
Yeah.
if I become a teacher right now. So it ends about here and then it spans all the way up, going this way up into Guerrero. So for the first one, we're going to try the Pichumel. It's going to be by Atelo Ramirez and his wife, Laura. And they're going to be spotted right here. So to get from Oaxaca City to these spots, Anatolia, probably, I'm going to admit that they're the only guys that I haven't visited out of the like 15 families that we work with. The past few times I haven't been able to make it over there. So I would say that, I mean, going up here, it definitely takes about 6 hours to drive there, just because you're kind of going in between mountains, and at least like the last 2 hours, 3 hours are all kind of mountain dirt roads. So it takes a little bit longer. So just moving on.
There they are.
This is Atelo y Laura. So the town of Reyes Menzopla, it's actually, this is driving to the town, which I thought was kind of crazy, but they've got a huge saguaro cactus forest, pretty much. And I guess the reason also why we have the Mixteca region, you know, and why the label color is a little bit different too, is that it's pretty dry. It has a lot of sort of limestone in the dirt, a lot of there's a lot of salt flats as well. So that's kind of the different colors. But here's a saguaro, which I think is also on the bottle, right? We've got one of those huge cactuses on there. And this town, let me go back a little bit. This town is traditionally known as a town that makes clay. So all the men go out to the mines and they get the clay, and then the wives, all the women in the family actually make pottery. So that's what they're known for. Laura makes all the money. She makes a lot of pottery, and they actually together travel to different markets. And so for Atelo, he was kind of trying to find a way, you know, where he can start this up and make mezcal and be able to sell, you know, 25 liters at a time, or, you know, at different markets that they go to. So for him, it's not necessarily, you know, full-time job. It's more about supporting his wife in this endeavor, which means he gets to have a little bit more fun too, I guess, with some of his practices and stuff. But here's a picture of Pichumel, which Pichumel is the word for what we would consider tepestate in Oaxaca. So you can kind of see that these have sort of like some whitish marbling on the leaves, which I think is really cool, but it's definitely something that you see in Puebla in terms of the agave. It's like these little stripes and stuff. Whereas in Oaxaca, they're a lot more kind of maybe a more darker green color. And so then I put a picture of, you know, the pencas being cut off, just so you can see how thick these leaves are as well on the tepestate compared to some of the other agaves we're going to see later on. And then of course here they're hanging out in the field with all the cactuses out there. So to get started about the production, once he harvests these agaves, he's going to mash them up in this sorry, let me see. Oh, look at that. I don't even have to see my face. Perfect. There we go. So he has these tree trunks that he actually kind of digs out and makes these canoas with, and uses these huge hammers in the background here to mash the agave. And once it's mashed, he'll ferment. And this is probably where I haven't tasted this one yet, but I can imagine just from smelling it, that sort of lacticness comes from, is because he pretty much just ferments for like 2 weeks, I think is about the average for him. I know it differs between batch to batch, but there's sometimes, you know, since he's working by himself, he can't necessarily just be out there all day, every day doing this work, as well as, you know, he'll just leave it there and be like, oh yeah, I'll just come get it tomorrow, you know, or whatever it may be. After he mashes the agave, I'm sorry, he cooks them first, obviously underground oven, mashes them in here. He ferments, and then after fermenting, he has this sort of, like I always say, Frankenstein kind of still here set up. So he's got two different toppers that he uses. One which is clay that his wife Laura made, and then he's also picked up a copper one. I don't know that he uses that one super often, but you pretty much just have this fire that's going on here at the bottom. Then you've had a larger galvanized steel barrel, which you can kind of see the top here, and it's pretty much just this galvanized steel barrel with the topper. You've got the arm, and it goes into a copper serpentine, which is also inside of here. And then boom, the mezcal comes out. So yeah. Let me see if I can find. One other thing. Something that I also wanted to highlight was kind of like the reforestation of agaves. This is not something that was done a lot in Puebla. Both Delfino and Otelo weren't huge cultivators, but we've kind of started, asking for seeds. We'll germinate them at our office or at the restaurant, kind of grow them for a few years, and then return them back to their land, depending on how much land they have or how much they're requesting. So that's Otelo, cutting down a quiote. We're going to collect the seeds, and these are little baby papalomes, I believe, which is considered tobola in Oaxaca. So I'm ready to get to drinking this stuff if y'all are.
Those are, Leslie, thank you. That's very informative.
Sure.
These are absolutely like, I think one thing that I love so much about this pick and this specific batch is the terroir, is the terrain. It's like you guys saw it in the picture there in the bottom right, in the corner. Like you have nopales growing wild next to all these agaves that are wild, and all this green in between. And it's just this beautiful ecosystem. And of course, not to mention all the insects and birds and bats that are feeding off of all of this biodiversity. And there in Puebla, you also have the protected biosphere as well. And so it's just a really beautiful place with a lot of beautiful things going on. And I even though we don't do the Zoom tastings that often anymore, I think one of my favorite parts are the photos. So I want to say thank you for putting together this amazing presentation, because it really brings to life what we're seeing and what we're enjoying in our glass. With that being said, anybody want to venture and say any thoughts of this first pick, the first expression we're tasting here today? I also noticed that people tend to open up, and I said this with Leslie when we do the chef's table dinners, people open up a little more as we go through the tasting, but we'll keep it going.
Well, I mean, I can start if you'd like, seeing as how, it's really good. And Otelo's is some of my favorite, but the pick that we had here in Texas that I helped pick out for the collection was actually a little bit lower ABV. I think it was at like 46, I believe. So I really dig, like, this one feels a little bit punchier, less lactic, but it gives me the same feeling as the pick that we had here in Texas, where, like you said, it's kind of like an entryway. To me, the reason why I picked it for here in Texas is because for me, it's like a summer mezcal. It's something that you can just enjoy, kind of throw back, like it just would appeal to more people. So whenever you said that, I was like, that's the exact same thing that I was personally thinking about. So I think it's super nice. It's it's got that same sort of drying feeling in the back, which I kind of like personally. But what do you guys think?
It's okay to just say, I like it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm going to start calling y'all out, man.
It's all right. Oh, please go ahead.
I definitely love it. I mean, it takes me back to the first Pichumel that I remember having, which I had at El Destilado, and was probably, I think, from the same producer. And for me, it's what I've always gotten from it is like a pickle brine kind of thing, like a briny herbal thing. So yeah, it mostly reminds me of other Pichumels that I've had, I think, from the same producer, and it's great.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I definitely picked up on that lactic quality right away as soon as I picked it up. And then I think there was just a chat saying the same thing. The mouth feels great. 47%, 94 proof. I wasn't, sure, there was going to be this full bodied and this flavorful. It's really, really good.
Thank you. Happy you enjoy it.
I dug this one a lot. I think I was getting a lot of like lemon zest and cherry on the nose, and then on the palate I was getting beautiful strawberry, and then still with some like a nice citrus background, so sort of like strawberry lemonade, like perfect summer, refreshing, super delicious.
Thank you, Mike. Beautiful. Well, I'm happy that you guys are enjoying it. Great news is this is just the start. We got 3 other more to try, and hopefully you guys left a little bit of that first one there. I think if there aren't any other comments or questions, I think we're ready to move to the second one here. What do you guys think? Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's go into the Espadillon. Am I saying that correctly?
Espadillon. Yeah, it's like saying in Spanish like espadín, but a huge ass espadín. Espadillon. And I'll show you why in a second.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So next one is the Espadillon. And here are the makers. I think you guys have okay, you have Emmanuel Anatolio. Cool. So Emmanuel is Anatolio's son. This is Emmanuel right here. Anatolio is here in the back. And I had to include that picture of him with the donkey because it's on the bottle. And I think it's great. So this is in San Jose Rio Minas. So just as a reminder, we're talking back in Oaxaca here. So I think from the pictures that I've seen personally, like I said, I haven't gone there. Sorry. From the pictures I've seen, I haven't gone there personally, but to me, it seems a lot more green, a little bit less, I guess, stone kind of minerally as up in Puebla, but still, part of the region, part of the same sort of like language and cultural connectiveness that they have there. And so here's a picture of the Espadillon. I almost said it wrong myself. So here it is on the left side with all the pencas still on, and here it is on the right. And again, this is a picture. And just so you guys know, the labels on our bottles are illustrations drawn from actual pictures that were taken out in the Palenque, which I think is really interesting. So here's the picture that would be on that particular bottle. And you can kind of see the difference between that, the leaves here being so compacted together. I mean, it's kind of crazy to see that many here at the bottom. You can even see that they've been cutting off the ones that have been dying as well. So it kind of reminds me of just like a lollipop Karwinski. Like if you just imagine, it might be kind of weird, but this is in my head. Just like a huge piña, but it still has like just as many sort of leaves as you would see on a Karwinski. So that's the Espadillon there. And yeah. Go ahead and show you this one. Wow. So this just as a comparison, this is the Horno, and I can talk about that once we get to tasting it. But here's a picture of the oven here, cover it up with palm leaves. So going to cook underground, same sort of way. I believe he uses a mechanical shredder, if I'm not mistaken. And here is his still. So his still here at the bottom as a boiling chamber is a tamalera, which is just really like a huge wide sort of stainless steel or some sort of metal pot. I mean, it's massive. And what they do is, they'll make the tamales and then just stick them in there, and that's where they steam them. And you can fill like 100 or something tamales, probably more than that, in these huge things. So with that, it's actually got a clay pot on top and then this copper cazuela here. And so you just pretty much just fill it with the agave fibers after you crush it. And then, yeah, and here's another picture of the donkey because I love them so much.
Can I interject real quick, Leslie? I absolutely love, I've never heard that before. I think it's a great way to visualize. is how many tamales you can fit in the clay pot to kind of figure out how the size of it is. So very clever.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see where you have the dirt and stuff kind of surrounding the tamalera. And like I said, it's just like a kind of wide pot. And so from what I'm thinking is that it's not very deep even to begin with, because you can see the fire here cuts off pretty short from what you saw, for example, here, right? You've got a whole layer, I mean, a whole few layers of rocks and stuff because you have a galvanized steel barrel in there. So I'm not sure, this is a question that I probably need to talk to Jason about that I'm just thinking about now because I'm a nerd and, you know, that's what I do. I wonder what that surface area sort of contact with the tamalera does, if anything, or if it's just harder to heat up from the bottom, or, you know, it's just, or if it takes longer to distill. No idea. I can't really answer those questions because I have them myself, but I do think it's a very resourceful way that I've seen a lot of producers in Puebla kind of make their mezcal. It's what you have available. So you're going to use that tamalera because you're like, yeah, I can fill this with fiber and then cover it and boom, mezcal, because that's what I have. You know, with Atelo, he's got a clay pot that his wife made because they've got hundreds of them at the house, right? So you've got a galvanized steel barrel that you're using and, you know, some trees around you that you can make a canoa with. So it's really cool to just see these sort of combinations. And like I said at the beginning, these atypical production methods in areas that are very remote, almost always difficult to get to, and you know, lots of people don't necessarily go there, but yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I think it's really cool to see the comparison of the stills, you know, to be honest, and it's really about what you have around you. And so Oaxaca, we have the tradition of the clay pot stills there. And so that we have the use of that. In Puebla, you know, I'm still learning more and more, but you just have this mezcalero and his wife using a steel barrel to produce theirs. So ultimately, I think it's about what you got around you. And so I think this is a really cool example. What do you guys think about the second one here that we're trying? I think for me, to just jump into it really quickly, I'm getting more of like that baking spice, like earthy. I think Leslie, you mentioned in one of your tasting notes, I think sweet potato potentially on this one. It's definitely more towards that realm. Very, very different than the first one that we tried, which was very more kind of bright. And I would say for if we're trying to get in order our palate and how different mezcals hit them, and I think this is what these tastings are all about, is that first one is on one side of the flavor spectrum, on the second one we're tasting is on the other side here. So I'd be very curious to hear what you guys think, and if you enjoyed the second one more or the first one.
And just as a note on that, this one, this Espalion, yeah, it takes about like 14 years to mature or something. So I've always been trying to find what this mostly tastes like, because this species isn't actually, it's not classified. So even though it looks like a huge espadín, I have no idea what it is. And a lot of people don't use this agave anymore because they ended up moving in Tequilana Weber from Jalisco and just using that to make mezcal because of some sort of government mandated thing. I can get into that, but it ended up kind of taking over all the agave that these guys were using. So this is an agave that I've never tried before, and this is the only producer that I know that it comes from. So I'd be really intrigued because this stuff tastes like, yeah, sweet potato. It smells like leather to me. His stuff kind of just tastes like beef jerky or barbecue to me. But
yeah, I was just thinking the exact same thing. It kind of reminds me of like walking into a steakhouse. The smell, like the flavor. There's something there like a beef rub or some, like you said, beef jerky. Very interesting. I picked that up too.
Awesome.
I got mesquite. Did anyone else get that? Like that was the nose for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I just went back to the first one and then back to this. I mean, yeah, they couldn't be more worlds apart.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's good.
That's why I love like these tastings. That's why we do the chef table dinners at the store and the virtual tastings here for you guys that aren't locally able to come to those. And it's just it's just like having an experience. Like we can preach all day long, but you guys are tasting it right now. So cheers. Any other? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Leslie.
Just a small correction. This was mashed by hand. Delfino mashes with a mechanical mill. Sorry about that.
I think the first time that I had this, I think what I ended up deciding that it tasted like was mango wrapped in bacon.
I like that. Like that.
If you told me this was cowhide fermentation, I would definitely, believe it. It's got some cow on there, it seems,
Mhm.
Awesome. Good to see you guys. Awesome. Any other
Cool.
comments about the second one here? Cool. Let's jump into the Leslie. Anything you wanted to add about the second one here before we move on to the third?
No, just wanted to make that correction. Hand mashed. The tamalera is stainless steel. There's different stuff that you can make tamaleras from, but yeah, no, I dig it. It was a mezcal for me that took me a little bit to open up to, just because of that bacony flavor that I get from it. So for me, picking out that Pichumel and tasting it, I'm like, oh, this tastes like candy. This tastes like airheads. Like this tastes super bright and fruity. And then going to that, I'm like, holy crap, that's completely different. And so for my flavor palette or profile that I like with my mezcales, it took me a while, but now I would say that in the collection, to me, they're the most unique because I haven't tasted anything like this, except for I would say some of the cowhide stuff that we've come out with. But even then, the cowhide stuff is more about like a more viscous mouthfeel, and it feels a little bit oilier, less meaty, but personal opinion there.
Beautiful. Awesome. Love what you guys do. Some great expressions. What a start. I think if there's nothing else here from the group, let's move on to the third one, which will be the De Horno for you guys. And I also have to say that I'm very appreciative of these tastings too, because I have been staring. I was telling Leslie this. I have been staring at these bottles since I ordered them during like December. I think it was like December last year. I ordered these babies and I haven't been able to taste them. And so when we got this private batch, I was like, yes, I get to open 3 up. And then I just kind of was like, just blindly chose the 3 others and was just like, yes, you're not that, you're cool, you're good. I'm just kidding. But it was, so I want to say thank you to you guys for making that happen, for you guys joining us here so that we can open up these bottles and share it with friends. I think that's what that's what mezcal is supposed to be enjoyed for. So without further ado, then let's get into the De Horno here. I'll give the floor to Leslie.
Steven, you're a lot more restrained than I am, but I guess you got a business to run or something. I don't know. Because man, I buy a bottle and it's done pretty much the next week. So ooh, that should tell me not to open up the store.
Well, I mean, I would say that the big difference is moving from retail is that I can't open up the bottle, but at the restaurant in San Diego, I can't say that I was on best behavior. I definitely justified many times pouring Cinco Sentidos into my cups at an end of a shift.
Well, always appreciated, but cheers to that. So the next, as I already talked about the production process, just pulling up the picture again here, the De Horno. So this De Horno, what's different about it is one, just to explain this varietal, it's a very close cousin to what is considered Arroqueño in Oaxaca. So it's an Americana variación oaxaquense Quincy's. And so you can see, I mean, these are massive, massive plants. This particular batch as well has been resting since 2014. So it's had some time to kind of chill out and, you know, all the different molecules and properties of this mezcal hanging out and first of all, resting for, you know, almost 7 years about. Justin, you know, they became friends. It ends up kind of chilling out, becoming a little bit more composed. So it's, this one is probably with the Pichumel, I would say Pichumel, second favorite would be Delano, because, and I would consider it's because of the resting process too.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, these agaves, Americana family, are massive agaves up and down California and other parts of the southern states. You'll see a lot of these type of agaves growing. But what makes it specifically special is that we have a subvarietal of that family growing that we're tasting here that we can't find in other parts. I find Americana distillates definitely like ones that you really have to be dialed in on the experience. They're quite complex. They're bold. A lot of the time they're meaty, and so I think like I personally I would never give an Americana, most of the time an Americana distillate to somebody that was first getting into mezcal. I would save it for moments like this, for example. But I do think that it's such a beautiful agave with such beautiful subtleties that it's worth showcasing, especially in this tasting here with you guys. What are you guys thinking about this one?
I really enjoy it. It's my favorite so far. It seems to last on the tongue like forever. In the way that like, what is that herb that we spinaldes? What is it?
Spilanthes.
Spilanthes. Like it has almost that spilanthes flavor or feel sensation. And I have to say, I am so sorry. I got to go pick up a friend from the airport. And don't worry, I haven't had too much of these. I go try get out of here. But it's such a sweet thing that you guys do this, and that I'd love to. First of all, I want to know where I can get some of these because they're amazing. And thank you for putting this on. I think I was in Tijuana in Baja. Like there's a ship down there, right? Yeah. Okay. I've been to your place down there. Thank you all. Have a great night. It's awesome.
Yeah, whatever you like. I can help you out. Not a problem.
Okay.
Have a good night.
See you later, brother.
Appreciate it.
All right. See you, Tommy.
Yeah, there's definitely, he hit it on the spot. There's this herbal quality on it. I think it's really fun as well. What else are you guys thinking?
This one kind of numbs my lips too and tongue. I get that with certain mezcals. I've never paid attention to which ones, but this one I definitely get that. And I'm glad you said it was cousin to Araucanio, because actually one of my favorite bottles I brought it here in case I didn't have enough Cinco Sentidos to drink. This is the Moreno's pick out of Chicago, and it's so good. It's one of my favorites.
It's very buttery, right? That one?
Yeah, it's delicious.
Beautiful. Nice. Anybody else want to speak on the De Horno?
I like this one a lot. I got a lot of minerality off this. Had a real like great sort of pop in my mouth. I got a lot of really delightful sort of bitter flavors. I thought it's well balanced with sweetness, but I was mostly getting things like chocolate bitters and number 2 pencil, and to me I had written down barrel aged. So when you said it was from 2014, some of that kind of comes together, that maybe this thing is sort of just become so complex over time and just really has that sort of tingling quality when all those flavors sort of meld together.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's not barrel aged. As far as the resting goes,
I know.
No, yeah.
For me, that's more. Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, it's funny because Steven tells me I have the best tasting notes because I do all the sheets that give like the tasting notes and everything. But I was like, it smells like loaded baked potato, but it tastes like menthol and, and some sort of like minerals and stuff. But this, before we picked it up, I'd have to double check how it was rested. But whenever we picked it up a few years ago, what we do anytime we pick up a batch is take it back to the office and actually transfer it over to glass. So we pick up in like these plastic 25 liters and then we transfer it over to glass at our office. I know we picked this one up a couple years ago. But yeah, I'd have to double check and get back to you about where it was rested beforehand. Because I get that question a lot. I'm like, personally, I haven't went to go visit them, but also, you know, I don't know if these guys have like a little cave, which they do. So I don't know if it does have a cave, but I always have to like ask just to make sure, like, was this like in the cave the whole time, or what was he storing it in? It's just sometimes they store it in whatever they've got. Not that any which way is worse, you know, unless it's just open or something. But I mean, coming from 2014 and still being at 49% is kind of remarkable for me. Just because, you know, usually keeping something rested for that long, you lose some points here and there, either through heat or through just, you know, how long it takes or how long it's been resting.
Yeah, this is, I mean, honestly, there's not that many mezcales in the US market that have been aged in glass for that long. There's definitely across different brands, people have it, but there's not a lot of it. So I think that's definitely also another point to make about this is that when you taste something off the still, or when you taste something 3 months off the still, which, you know, some of us have had the experience of doing, is it can be quite remarkable how different the flavors can be just going from 3 months to 6 months, from 6 months to 12 months. So we can just imagine from 12 months to 8 years, right? How much of a difference that can make. And then also on that note is then to speak to this as well is, okay, with all that aging 8 years, it's still on, I would say, characteristically on the bolder side, right? So imagine how mighty of a life that this agave lived to be giving the flavors that you guys are tasting, especially after being aged for that long. I think is something else to make mention on that too. Any other lasting comments, questions, concerns? No concerns, right? When we're drinking mezcal. Cool. Let's get into the last one here. The Pechuga de Azul. I always like to finish with the Pechugas. I think it's just becoming a tradition. We did the Pechuga at the chef's table dinner as the final course with beautiful granita. And I think everyone really had a good time with this one. So I look forward to you guys smelling it, tasting it. Even from the first series, Leslie, this one, it takes me back to Christmas time or to the holidays. It's got a lot of those flavors going on, licorice, anise. It's quite special. And even if you're not into those types of flavors, Zambuca or stuff like that, I think that everything here is very well balanced, can be very much appreciated. So looking forward to hearing more about this one.
Yeah, so Delfina, just as an intro to this, because it's one of my favorites, but I don't count it as considering it one of my favorites because it's always just going to be a favorite. So I'm like, okay, besides that one, you know, what are the other favorites that I have? But Delfina's Palenque is actually the first one that I ever went to. And whenever I moved to Oaxaca, my whole purpose was to learn as much as possible about mezcal. I had been working at a mezcaleria here in Austin, Las Perlas. If anybody's from LA, we have one here in Austin. But just working there, I was just like mind blown about how many different flavors. So that's why I moved to Oaxaca. And I told Jason, the owner of the brand, was like, I'll work at your bar, you know, whatever many days, but whatever days that I'm off, I need to be with you every step of the way. Like, I want to go visit these guys. So Delfino was the first one, and he's still the most special to me in terms of his flavor profile. I have not ever tasted something so delicious in my personal preference, because I love anise. I'm a huge fan of like chartreuse. I'm a huge fan of absinthe. That super herbal flavor that you can sometimes get in stuff from like Miatwatlan, for example, where it's kind of like green and herbal and poppy, but it's a little bit more sharp and dry down there, less fruity. Up in Puebla, that thing just gets knocked up like 5 notches, right? So I love talking about this. So if y'all have all the questions, please tell me. Because I've visited him quite a few times, and I really, really love his style, especially. Let's see. Cool. So let's move on to Delfino, my fave. Okay, so Delfino Tobon Mejia. So he's from San Pablo Mayaltepec. This town has a little over 200 people in it. And everybody in town makes mezcal, right? So there's 11 or 12 families. Delfino is the only one that works on his own. The rest of the families are actually signed on to work with Del Maguey. So that's a nice fun comparison for you to do in terms of maybe like not necessarily the Pichuga, but in something else. So in this town, everybody makes mezcal, but it's also super, super remote. Again, reminding you of the map that we're at here. You know, it looks like they're close, Delfino and Natelo, but 2 completely different areas. Where Delfino's at is, it looks like a oasis in the desert. So quite literally, right? There obviously there's, you know, a few times a year where, you know, this fills out with a little bit more green. But this in the middle. Right, I see it right here. No, but yeah, it's a wonderful town, and this is actually a picture taken from the cliffs. So they've got these huge, large mountains, and up on the cliffs they actually have like cave drawings up there. So it's an old town, and again, it's only 200 people. It's very, very small. And the Pichuga that we tried last time, Steven, was the Pichuga de Mole Poblano or the Papalote? Do you remember?
The Papalote.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to include a picture of that because I think they're beautiful where he's at. And these are like, the Papalote is again, what we would consider Tobala in Oaxaca. So it's a Pototorum. And then here's a picture of the Pisora, which is a marmorata, you know, colloquially named Tepestate in Oaxaca. The reason why I included these agave pictures is because we don't have a pictures of the azul. So what the story behind the azul that he's using is that he ended up finding somebody kind of, I don't even know how far away. You just said like around the mountain, you know, like going around it. That has actually been growing azul, been cultivating azul for a while. And so I kind of mentioned before about the Espadillon kind of falling out of favor because they were bringing in this Tequilana Weber into Puebla. I don't want to get into the specifics because I don't know all the details, but it was kind of a way for the Mexican government to try to create more of the source material for the tequila business to use. So they're like, let's go to our next door neighbors and plant, you know, Blue Weber out there, and then we can just get that back and make tequila with it. So that's essentially what's going on in Puebla, where these guys have been able to actually get Azul or Tequilana Weber, Blue Weber agave, kind of close to that. So he ended up making a batch of 400 liters of Azul, which is pretty large. He actually probably makes the most, or like the larger sizes, because he uses a copper pot still boiling chamber. But from those 400 liters, he used 2 of them to make this Pichuga. So we'll move on to that. So same thing with the Azul. He's gonna use an underground oven. This is kind of a newer oven that he's been using that he lined with brick, which is something that I also don't see very often. And he just stacks these agaves up. I mean, this is like 8-9 feet. I don't know how they do this, but they somehow managed to cover this whole like cone head looking thing. And, you know, cook it for however long, right? His cook, you know, kind of varies the same way as Atelo does. He sometimes leaves cooked agave kind of sitting there for a while because this place is actually really high elevation and it gets pretty cold at night. It gets around to like the 40s or something. Last time I stayed there, it was very cold. for a Texas girl. Okay, don't laugh at me. I know y'all are in San Francisco. All right, I get it. At least most of you, I get it. But for me, that's cold. So, the agave doesn't go through like just the heat hitting it so hard. So he can actually leave it out and it doesn't get moldy. He can leave it out for a few weeks. I think one of the times that I went to go visit him, he said it was there for like almost a month, that he just had it kind of storing, waiting to go through the process of mashing the agave and fermenting and all that stuff, because he had some other batches ahead of that. So after he cooks the agave, he mashes it using a mechanical shredder, kind of like a wood chopper or wood chipper, I'm sorry. And once he does that, he ferments in these tubs back here. And then after that, he uses this weird Frankenstein still. So even now that I've been working, big sigh, even now that I've been working for the brand, it's kind of difficult to explain the setup of this still. So I try to include a picture that was kind of the same size of what you would see inside here. So down here, you've got the fire, then you've got a larger copper pot, like you would see, making rum or whiskey or anything like that. So he's got a copper pot in there. And then he's got this topper that he uses, but on the inside, he's got these 3 plates that they ended up making out of copper. And so what ends up happening with using this system, using the arm and then another copper serpentine on this side, is you've got a 3-plate still, right? And so you only have to go through it once to come out with the final product. So you only have to distill once to come out with mezcal. Usually producers have to distill twice. Atelo distills twice, Anatolio distills twice, most of Oaxaca distills twice. Delfino just has to do once. So with that, once the first iteration or the first distillation comes out.
Leslie, I'm sorry. So what is it? What proof does it come off the still?
So it depends on how he blends it, right? Because it's coming off at all levels. So at the very, I've tasted the 80%, and trust me, it's fun, but it's not great. Right. But I mean, it just depends how he ends up blending it. So for him, I don't want to misremember, because they kind of do it differently every time. But for that first distillation, it'll come out at like 80%. They'll take out a certain number of these 25 liters, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll pull probably like 1 of those or 3 of those or 4 of those, depending on what they feel, tasting it and waiting for it. Because this is kind of like not a continuous still, but like a plated still. The still is a little bit slower, so they're actually having to stay there longer and kind of watching it and taking care of it and fixing the fire. So it obviously starts at like 80. I think at the end they'll probably shut it off at like, this is my sciencey thing, probably in low 30s, high 20s. It's hard for them to kind of figure that out, and goes right back around to why this is called Cinco Sentidos, is because it means 5 senses in Spanish, right? So it's all up to the 5 senses that these producers use to figure out when their mezcal is ready. So for them, they've been making mezcal without any sort of technology or anything like that. So it's not like they have a chart that says, okay, this came out at, blah, 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 or whatever. Most of the time, Delfino will always say 48. He's like, yeah, it's 48. It's like, okay. All right, dude, I guess, and I mean, sometimes he's on it, right? He's like, oh yeah, this is 48, 49. This one's a little bit higher, but it just comes out to however he blends it. So because, like I said, it's 1, I can't really tell you that answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I rambled on too much.
Yeah, no, I got you. I just thought that was interesting, like you said, 1 distillation. So I was just kind of curious. Yeah,
and again, this is the first time that I've seen this in Puebla. I think the only time, but the whole town kind of makes it like this as well. So I guess it's a town thing, but again, it's just kind of using what they have to make this batch. But yeah.
So why does the bottle say with chicken?
because there's chicken in it. Thank you for the segue. Boom, there's your chicken. So now that we have that first distillation done, we're gonna throw that that spirit back into the still, and we're gonna set up a, oh my God, I hope this works. Ah, perfect. We're gonna set up a little basket inside the still. So this is the still without the topper. And he's tying this wire that's holding kind of like a wooden, not wooden, kind of like a crate inside that you can kind of see. It's hard because of the steam, but it's like a little small crate. And that's what they throw the, I'll play it again. That's what they throw the chicken onto. So they don't throw the chicken directly into the still. They just kind of put it on this like tray thing. And then what they do is that they pour the mole on top of the chicken, so that some of that mole actually does get into and mix with the mezcal at the bottom of the still. So with their mole, it's a mole that his wife makes. And if you guys have tried the mole poblano, I'm not sure if you have or haven't, but he's actually making the mole poblano for us now. And it was a different producer before, got switched to Delfino. So just a funny story about him. The mole that's used in this Pechuga de Azul is the town's mole. This is the mole that they make in this town by his wife. She makes it, she picks out the ingredients, all that stuff. They make the mole and they toss it into the still. So they're just like directly pouring it over the chicken. I love the sound
That's
on
wild.
too.
Is this a common? Is this a common thing? I feel like I've never heard of this or seen this.
So
before.
this is, so Pechuga, when people, I don't think people really explain what Pechuga is. So Pechuga is that they throw in a protein, right? But people think that that's just it. But there's a mole that also goes with it. It's just called Pechuga because it's an added protein. But you know, all these different spices and fruits and you know some veggies and everything, like it's all of it together. And the easiest way to do that is a mole. I mean, once you cook all these flavors together, that flavor, if you've ever had mole, you know what I'm talking about. But
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I've
flavors
always
come out.
thought that it was the, you know, the meat and then like, you know, fruit and nuts and things sort of suspended up. But and I've had mole pechugas. This makes sense. But so they all have some sort of mole that gets dumped in?
I don't want to say they all do. So I don't want to speak for every Pechuga that's ever made, because obviously there may be some people that do it differently. And I think I've seen some folks kind of make it more like a cornucopia basket sort of thing. But I like the Pechugas that I personally know from some of the bigger brands, they'll do this. I know definitely the Pechugas that we have do this. So yeah, I don't want to be, you know, all encompassing of everybody else out there, but to me, it seems like the simplest way to do it and the best way to get the flavors, you know, add some heat and then get all those spices to come out.
100%. Yeah. Ultimately, it depends on the producer, but I think like some of the most like highly sought out pechugas that I have that we carry at our restaurant in San Diego, as well as at Tona Mercado in San Francisco, are the pechugas from Cinco Sentidos, and I think it's a big part of it has to do with the mole aspect that they do on there for you guys. So you know, ultimately, different producers doing different things, but I think it's up to your guys' palate of figuring out what fits best to you guys. Thank you, Leslie. That was amazing, like footage, like seriously, amazing content. Thank you for that. Like, not normally people are so on point with their PowerPoints during these things, and you killed it. And so I want to say thank you to you for that. Guys, what do you think about this last one?
I love this last one. Maybe it's not, maybe it's also because it's the last one, but yeah, this one's kind of a contrast. You get all the baking spice, but then you get kind of a little bit of green chili and that little chickenish flavor. So yeah, I've been a sucker for pechugas lately, and I think this one's fabulous because it's such a contrast between the baking flavors. Then you got the green chili, and it's kind of a explosion of flavor. So yeah, that's already had to buy one of these from Tejona Mercado. So yeah.
It's a fun take. Like whenever Steven sent me the 4, I was like, cool, let's go. Like this is gonna be fun because all of these flavors are so completely different. But you know, just to kind of take care of what's actually in it, you've got green apple, you've got plátano macho, you've got bananas, red chilies, you've got anise, you've got, so there's some fennel in there, there's almonds, there's cinnamon, there's, oh man, just probably a couple more spices that I'm forgetting right now. But yeah, it's just a combination of all of that. And to finish out the story about the mole poblano, whenever we asked him to do the mole poblano, we bought him mole poblano from who we were sourcing it from before. And we gave him the mole and we're like, hey, do you want to take on this project of making the mole poblano? He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Go and taste the first and second batch of his stuff. And I remember telling Jason, I'm like, he added some anise in here. I know he did. That does not taste like the mole poblano we used to have, which was fermented in rawhide, Frankenstein still, a couple different ingredients, a little bit more chocolate in that one. But it definitely tastes a little bit more oilier without so much of the sort of very bright spice feeling. He's like, really? I was like, yeah, dude, like I know this flavor and this tastes like his pechuga de azul. This pechuga de mole poblano is going to taste the exact same. So unless, you know, I think he added something. And sure enough, Jason's like, did you add anise? He's like, well, yeah, I needed anise. That's why. I'm like, okay, well, you know, that's just such a particular flavor profile for this town that I absolutely love. So, I mean, if you guys love it as much as I do, then that's it. I'm super happy.
I'll be right back, okay? Do you want the blanket?
Awesome. Sorry.
I want a blanket.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's all good, man. Well done. Mal has a newborn, so he's always doing a great job of multitasking.
It's bedtime right now. We're doing bedtime.
Cool. Any feedback on you guys? What are you guys thinking about this last one?
Yeah, I think immediately there was a very strong resemblance to absinthe from the smell to the flavor. And I was going to ask, like, what created that, you know, that profile, but it sounds like it's probably the anise in mole that pushes it that direction. Is that accurate?
Yeah, for sure. And I would invite you to taste the other ones from him as well in this line. There's an ensemble of 3 different agaves, the Pisora, Papalote, and Azul. And then he has another one that's Pisora y Papalote, I think.
Okay.
And you can still taste that anise, which is it. I've been trying to figure out if it's actually that, like, I don't think he's adding anise to the other batch, right? Because it's not Pechuga. And I haven't seen him ever add anything else to any of his other batches that aren't Pechuga. So I know that's not it. The still has been the same. So I'm still trying to figure out if it's a thumbprint or maybe he just uses so much anise that it's starting to like stain the pot. And now all of his stuff has a tinge of anise. That's, again, my personal opinion. Yeah. But I think all of his mezcales have that slight flavor. This one obviously has a little bit more, but it definitely has to do with the anise, the cinnamon even too, brings it out some more.
Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was great.
Cool. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, this was my favorite, and I was very puzzled about it until the Pechuga was explained.
Yeah, Pechugas, they're fun. I mean, they're made for celebratory times, you know, weddings, quinceañeras, graduations. They're not made too often. I don't have many Pechugas at the store, but the Pechugas I carry, like this one, like top notch, right? So if you find a Pechuga you really enjoy, you got to go for it because they're all so widely different. We had a Pechuga that was made for our wedding from this amazing producer from Tosba. And, you know, he used lamb on there. And he used a recipe from a producer that has been making Borrego Pechugas in Puebla for a really long time. And so it was, in Guerrero. So it was a really good good experience to kind of taste and compare and contrast all these different flavors, all these different pechugas, and different meats can have widely different effects because you have the fat dripping in there. Before we unfortunately have to sign off, I want to just give the floor one more time for anybody else that wants to give any lasting comments about this last one or any of the other mezcales before we kind of go into our ending statements here. No? All right. Well, cheers. Enjoy the mezcals. I want to say anything that you enjoyed here tonight, they're all available to purchase through Tahona Mercado. If you are trying to get a bottle outside of the state, just select pickup and we can figure out shipping later. But there's only a certain amount, a limited quantity of these. So that's why I say just do pickup and then I'll just reach out to you about shipping and we can figure that out later. If you want them and you're, if you're local, you're here, you can come pick them up at the store. But I want to say again, like, our concept at Tahona doesn't exist without you guys and your guys' appreciation of small batch spirits. So I want to say thank you to every single one of you guys to spend an hour of your valuable time here with us, with me and Leslie here tonight. We truly appreciate it. And I'm going to give the floor for Leslie for any lasting words she wants to say before we sign off.
Yeah, just real quick, I hope you realize or notice that these are all empty, by the way. I just kept the bottles because I thought they were dope. But yeah, thank you, Stephen, so much. It's always a pleasure to work with you and go to your shop. And yeah, I really enjoyed doing this kind of stuff. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, definitely follow us on Instagram. I just put the handle there. I will put my email as well. If anybody wants pictures or you have questions about Oaxaca, how to get around even, I have plenty of people that hit me up about that all the time, as well as anything that you see like, hey, recommend me some mezcal on the shelf because you don't trust the people that work there to do it for you, which happens a lot. I'm going to be honest, it happens a lot here because, the thing that I've always appreciated about California is that you guys are way ahead of us here in Texas in terms of agave spirits, really just any spirits, just enjoying spirits without, taking shots or getting fucked up all the time. So it's nice to talk to a group that's actually but that's interested and has a little bit more knowledge as well, because that means that you appreciate the brand, right? We're not always out there all the time, doing like private tastings and stuff like that. But anytime that we can do something like this and sip and share and chat, it makes me really happy because that's, as a brand educator, that's me. That's what I love doing. So I appreciate you guys so much and for all of your questions and for joining us today.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you. So sad to say good night, but we'll see you again, hopefully next month with our next batch. I really appreciate you guys. And if you guys, like Leslie said, if you guys have any questions or anything, Tahona, Cinco Sentidos, we're always here for you guys. Really appreciate it. Good night. We'll see you guys soon. Salud.
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 Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank
Appreciate
you. Cheers.
If you guys need blankets, let me know.
Hey.
Cheers.